a long-awaited trip to the Isle of Spice. Mr. Johnson was home at last. The old man peered through the window. The plane made its final turn and pointed its nose in the direction of Morris Bishop International Airport. Tears welled up in his eyes as he sat up in his seat and stared at the blue water below. He pointed out a small fishing boat that left a white trail in the seawater as it sped off in the distance. He saw a couple of scissors-tailed birds glide in the distance. Those birds were plentiful in Grenada when he was a child, and they are noted for soaring high above the sea and diving swiftly into the water to snatch fish. Mr. Johnson never bothered to find out the scientific name for the scissors-tailed bird. Then the plane touched the tarmac and a loud applause erupted. He no longer thought of the cut-eye look he got from the woman who sat at the end of his aisle and who loudly chirps every time he got up to go and pass water in the small lavatory. What the hell did she expect? After all, he was no spring chicken, and the bladder could no longer retain its content for long periods. He forgot the TB man sitting behind him who pulled out someone's hand luggage from the overhead compartment and stuck his bag there. He had angrily stated that the piece of luggage belonged in the part of the plane designated for bulky luggage. The odd thing was that his bag was almost as huge as the one he pulled out. Memory of the turbulence the plane had to struggle through was also a distant memory, even though it had been mightily discomforting and the pilot had to reassure us all, which he did in his authoritative but mellow voice. All of that was forgotten as the plane came to a halt on the tarmac. A woman bowed and said, "Thank you, Jesus." It was a prayer of thanks for the safe flight. A little girl no more than 3 joined in the cheering. She smiled as she put her tiny hands together. It was Mr. Johnson's first trip back home from England in umpteen years, and he was anxious to see what the experience would behold. His friend from Central in Guav had already told him of the many changes that had taken place while he was a resident in the cold. He scanned the area before him. When he left Grenada, there was a black sand beach somewhere near Point Salines. He heard it was swallowed up during the construction phase of the international airport during the 1980s. Many years ago, it was a popular beach lineman spot. You remember the sailor from the Man of War who took a serious liking for Grenadian rum punch on that beach, and after consuming a bottle or so, he got so drunk his comrades had to drag him back to the ship on the pier in St. George's. He thought of the black sand beach, but he thought harder about the lighthouse. He remembered the days father took him to visit the lighthouse. He loved walking up the stairs that led to the top. The lighthouse was special, and he felt sad that it was history. He used to stand on Melville Street and observe the blinking of lights and the reflection on the seawater. There was another light that came to his mind. He vividly recalled the reflection of the lights from Empire Cinema on the Carronade seawater. Whenever the thought of the lighthouse hit him, the words of Philip Bliss's old spiritual came to his mind. Brightly beams our Father's mercy from the lighthouse evermore, but to us he gives the keeping of the lights along the shore. Let the lower lights be burning, send a gleam across the waves. Some poor fainting, struggling seaman you may rescue, you may save. He made his way down the steps of the plane, thinking about the lighthouse and its importance. But there was still other lights. His friendship with his old pals from Guave in the parish of St. John had gleamed brighter than the kerosene lamp over the years. They used to send Manako and Tattoo for him, and often over the phone they reminisced about the hunting days on the ground known as Palmer's Dig. Those conversations had put a bright spark in his life in England and gave him a reason for living. But he was home, feeling much better after years of physical and homesickness. He was happy that he made it past 3 score years and 10, and he was happier that he was in the Isle of Spice. Another light hit him. The sun stung his head, and the sweat poured from his wrinkled brow. He looked around and thanked Papa God that he still had eyes to observe the beauty of the surroundings. He thanked Papa God that the lighthouse was still beaming as bright as the sun, even it was only in his memory. And he thanked Papa God that an old pal was there waiting for him at the airport. They had kept the light of friendship burning like the perennial Masanto over the years. Once again, he will drink of his broth in Guave. Once again, he will awake in his homeland and feel the freshness of the breeze on his face as he observed the fishermen and women pulling nets on the lands. And he would journey to Carriacou to hear the big drummers play. Those drummers maintained the rhythm and captivating tempo of the drum that came all the way from Mother Africa with their ancestors. Mr. Johnson was home at last. He smiled. He hugged his friends. He prepared to make his way to Guave and await the moonlight. And most of all, he thanked Papa God that he survived the vicious virus. Anthony Wendell de Riggs.